Welcome to the new season of the Live Your Spa Life show. The SPA in Spa Life stands for Seek Power Always, that divine power within you to do what you're here to do. The theme for this season is Freedom Fighter. Amazing people like you share ways to ensure your freedom physically, financially, spiritually, and in your relationships to create a world-class life. In these times of uncertainty, it's time for you to move past the distractions and start trusting yourself more through your God-given knowingness. No one truly knows better what's best for you than you. In this season, you'll have plenty of examples of people choosing their best life and giving a voice of freedom to those who are also looking to have their best life. Thank you for sharing your precious time with us and being part of the Live Your Spa Life conversation. With us today is Annie Fonte, entrepreneur, inventor, artist, consultant, speaker, mentor, and all-around badass. Annie comes from humble beginnings. Raised on the plains of northeastern Colorado, she started out as a dirt farmer, kicked up some dust as an athlete, got gritty in the business world. Annie has over 2 decades of entrepreneurial endeavors under her belt, each with the same intrigue, suspense, adventure, twists, and turns that make up great novels. Her personal experiences are equally captivating. As a result, Annie has a way of connecting and engaging her audiences. She tells stories that excite, energize, and inspire. Annie is generous about sharing information that helps others realize that simplicity is really the ultimate sophistication. Annie, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. It's my pleasure to be here.
This is so great. And let's just start here by talking about, tell us more about simplicity and sophistication.
Well, I think especially in this day and age, there's so much going on in the world, and there's so many opportunities to be distracted with social media and the news cycle, and it's 724. It's easy to chase the shiny objects out there. It's like, I just got a new puppy, and everything's a new something for him to investigate and to see if there's an opportunity to taste it or to chew on it or to chase it. And I think we as humans sometimes behave like that. There's this new thing and this new thing on social media and this new thought leader and this new course and this new place to go or place to eat. And if we don't have some discipline in putting boundaries around ourselves to protect our peacefulness and our contentment, it can be easy to get pulled into the fast lane of life and not really realize how complex and distracted we've become. And we allow people, places, and things to steal our peace. And then we wonder why we are ready to pull our hair out some days versus if we would just slow it down a little bit and make really inspired choices and informed choices and decisions instead of one after another when you really haven't taken the time to consider what the long-term consequences may be of those choices.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and your experiences have led you on many rides in many different ways. And you talk about your life being like a great novel. If you would put a novel to your life, which novel best reflects it?
Which novel? Well, probably it's not a novel. I've written a book. It's called Keep Your Ass in the Saddle. And that is the story of my life. So that's the book that would best describe it, because I do describe a lot of the things that have happened in my life. As far as a novel, let me think about that as we continue to talk here, and I'll come up with something.
Okay. Well, let's go back to your book. I love the title, Keep Your Ass in the Saddle. And I love the description about it too, because you talk about how a farm, a fire, and a failure led you to freedom. So what inspired this book?
Well, I after my house burned down, my house here in the Rancho Santa Fe area in 2007 burned. And at the same time, the 12-year relationship that I was in with this gentleman was going up in flames. And at the same time, my dad died. And at the same time, one of the companies I was a founder of was in a really complex lawsuit with a major international company. And after the dust settled from all of those events, I sat on the edge of my bed and I put my elbows on my knees and I said to myself, Annie, you have to get yourself together. And so I took that time it was about a year that I just did a lot of walking and a lot of reading and a lot of self-rediscovery of myself, because I wanted to and I needed to redesign my life. And so I came up with what I call lines in the sand, 10 lines in the sand that I was committed to living my life moving forward from. And so as I did that, I was telling people about that, and they said, "Oh my gosh, you should share this with people." And I said, "Oh, I didn't do this to share it with people. I did this to save myself." And they said, "No, you really should." So they talked me into doing one of the lines for one of their corporate retreats, which was a finance line. And then she said, "Oh my gosh, you should really teach this." And I said, "No, I don't really want to teach this. Once again, I just did this to help myself." And so I thought, well, why not? If it can help anyone else, I might as well do a beta class. So I got 10 of my gal pals together and I said, "Will you meet with me once a month for a year in my barn?" And I wrote the content and the structure around each of these lines and came up with a program called Lines in the Sand. And it was amazing to me to witness the transformation these women went through. And they said, "Oh my gosh, you should put this online." So it just kept, bubbling forward. And then someone says, "You should write this. You should write a book about all this whole experience of yours." So it all kind of grew out of no intention of mine, but encouragement and urging from others. And it was a cathartic process to go back through one's whole life and write about, growing up on a farm in Colorado, and then my experience as an athlete, and then some of the things that happened in my life. I'm glad I did it. It's not for the lighthearted, writing a book. Yeah. But once I got that accomplished, and I learned a lot about publishing and writing, I might have another one in me. We'll see.
I love it. It's so good. So of the 10, lines in the sand, which one speaks to you the most today?
The one that speaks to me the most is to practice surrender. And what that means for me, as far as the line in the sand, is be willing to let go of things. And I don't know about the audience, listeners and yourself, but I believe there's something bigger and more powerful and more knowing than myself that really has a purpose and a pathway for my life. And my job is to respect and honor that, and be quiet enough to look for the signs that that's the case. Because I don't know about you, but generally anytime I've gotten involved and I want to control a situation, it doesn't go so well. Because if I would just, okay, what am I learning about myself by being patient? What am I experiencing? Because I really think that people, places, and things show up in our lives to show us where we're not free. And so that's the question I generally ask myself is, okay, what part of me, what life lesson do I need to learn? Where am I lacking freedom so I can't just let this go and let flow take over instead of me wanting to control it, which I think control is oftentimes ego driven and fear driven versus trust and willingness, and just the willingness to be vulnerable and intentional instead of calculating and needing to control all the levers that might exist for us out there.
Right. No, it's so important, especially in the last couple of years, fear has driven people in so many different directions, and be able to look at this, there was a statistic that I saw in some of your work that talked about that 60% of executives and professional women experience anxiety, stress, and de-stress in the workplace, which is such a high number when you think of operating from that place. And you talk about having a new paradigm. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's been my observation, especially through COVID. I think COVID was that time out that really forced people to take a hard look of where we had dysfunction in our own lives. And I don't know about you, but I know of several people that decided to either cut back on what they were doing or change careers or do something completely different altogether, or instead of working to really back off of that and be home and raise their children. So it had a lot of good that came out of it. I think there was plenty of destruction that came out of it as well, but I think there was a lot of good that came out of it. And I think the paradigm shift that I'm talking about is, I think, especially for women, I think oftentimes women do things and become things that they think others want them to do and become, versus coming from an expression of their true essence and being authentic with who they are in life. There is nothing wrong at all in my observation and my experience, although I'm not a parent. I think motherhood is the most important job in the world. And I think oftentimes, yeah, you might hear a woman say, "I'm just a mom." No, you're not just a mom. You're a taxi driver and a photographer and a psychologist and a baker and a chef and you're so many things. And I think especially those first 3 to 5 years of a young person's life is so impacted by what intake they have. And it's so important to have that intake of a parent who's mindful and really intentional about raising them in the world. So to really consider, who am I really? And I think I've observed some women too, it appears that they feel like they have to act like a man in the workplace. And I really think if women will be women and be feminine and smart and show up in a way that is respectful of themselves and respectful of the position, and especially respectful of the fact that they are women, that their path would be a little smoother, I think. So just to really respect who you are and be honest about who you are and do things you do because it's truly what you want to do versus what someone else wants you to do, or what you think the world in general wants you to do, or what might be the trendy thing to be doing. And there along with that comes a lot of freedom.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
you finally just take that big deep breath and go, wow, this is what's been missing all this time.
Right.
So you naturally fall into a place of just being genuine with yourself, and then your authenticity rubs off on others, and it either encourages them to be authentic, or at least it gives them the opportunity to say, am I telling the truth to myself too?
Right. Absolutely. Well, I think also just honoring the season that you're in as well. Like, I think sometimes we start out on a trajectory and we think like you said about other people's expectations, or this is where you think you should be, but it may just be for that season of your life. Right. And to be able to pivot and shift, and especially as we learn different things, to see like, where is life taking us, and where can we make those shifts and changes. And I think that, a lot of times our listeners can feel, trapped by some of their choices and don't know how to change things, whether they're in a relationship that's not working, or their work is not the same way, or there may be challenges with their children. There's a lot of different things that can be happening in life. When people find themselves in that position and they find that they're maybe not being as authentic, or they're not on the path that they saw themselves being, what are some of the steps they can take to start making some of those changes?
Well, one of the first things that I did for myself, and I would invite others to consider for themselves, is I looked at the relationships in my life, the one with myself first and foremost, because if we don't have a good relationship with ourselves, we're likely not going to have really healthy relationships with others. And saying, is this relationship serving me the way it currently is? And serving not in a bad way, in an egotistical way, but does this really align with who I am authentically? And is it helping me to contribute to the world in a manner that makes a difference as far as what I want to do? And same with the friendships, and whether you're in a marriage or a partnership, is that relationship, again, authentic? Are both people in it for the reasons of coming from this really true and real place? And is it supportive of who I truly am in my life? Same with a job. Same with, even the environment that you live in. Is this environment an environment that I really like and feel comfortable within? Or is it an environment that I've cobbled together so other people will like me, or think I'm successful, or think that I'm, on the right track? And so it really comes down to that willingness to be really just radically honest with ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I totally can see that. And I think that, I think this is where it's helpful to have, coaches and consultants in our life, right? Because we don't always, when we're in it, we don't always see some of the things that are right in front of us. And, to be able to have some of that perspective, not only just kind of checking in with your own soul and what's important with you, but, I love how you brought, several of your friends together as you went on this journey, because, are the people who we surround ourselves, they're a reflection, right, about who we are, and we get to see ourselves in the people that we surround ourselves with. And I think that that is such a great thing about who we surround ourselves with. So when you're choosing like the people that you are spending your time with, how is it that, the parts that are reflection of you and the part where, they're living their life, how is it in being authentic? Because a lot of times people will be like, you can be authentic with someone, but you also want them to arrive at things on their own as well. So how do you kind of balance those two things?
Well, I think for me, it's really values driven. And so who I choose to surround myself with, it has to be in alignment with my values. Otherwise, that malalignment, there's stress there. There's something that's agitating about that. So integrity is my highest value. So I'm going to choose to be around people who are very much filled with honesty and truth and integrity. And my second value is appreciation. So I'm very put off is too strong of a word, but I'm not attracted to an energy that is woe is me or victim oriented or life is horrible. I'm attracted to people who really look at even the smallest of things, like, wow, did you see the beautiful sunrise this morning? Or, I was in the shower today, and as the water flowed over my body, I was just so grateful we have running water in this country. There are countries in this world that don't. And you turn a light switch on and a light comes on. Those things in some places in our world are unheard of. And then my third value is abundance. And I don't mean just financial abundance, but abundance of energy and abundance of willingness to give and contribute to others, and joy and positivity and those kinds of things. So that's the type of people I look for in my life. And I think just being that authentically, and I will probably say that word a lot. It seems like it's been a little overused lately, but it really is a word that's important to me in my life. I think if we show up as who we truly are, others will either be attracted to that or they may not be ready for it yet. And that's why I think it's important not to compare ourselves to others or to get too hung up on what others think of us, because really what others think of us is none of our business to begin with. And generally what others think of us have nothing to do with us and everything to do with them. So those are kind of the value-based parameters that I put on who I like to hang out with.
Yeah. And I love that intentional living, right? Being purposeful about what that looks like, which reminds me, one of the questions I love asking my guests is that, we live differently in our bedroom versus our kitchen or our office. So what's your favorite room in your home and why?
I had the good fortune to build my home from the ground up after the fire. And so I was very intentional, to use your word, and a word that I love, that as I was putting together this new environment for me to be over the roof over my head, I wanted every single room in my house, every single vignette or sitting venue to be a place that I could sit down and put my feet up on the table or sit back in my chair and go, oh. And so all my rooms I love, but what I love most is being outside. And so I have a garden down at my barn, and I have a little flower garden up at my house, and I love to be out. I'm a farm girl at heart, so I love to be outside digging in the dirt and planting things that grow nourishing food for myself. And I have this beautiful flower garden, so every day I walk out and I see these beautiful blossoms all year round. And I have some seating out there, and so outside is one of my favorite places to be, because I'm a true lover of nature.
I love that so much. There's something just so inspiring about that. I've got a rose garden outside my kitchen window, and it makes me happy every morning just to be able to look out there and see where it's at. And, I just started doing a garden actually with my grandson, and we started from seeds, and to see like the cucumbers grow, it's just like, as soon as he walks in the door, the first thing he wants to do is check out the garden. And it's just such a beautiful thing, about how we can create beauty and abundance. And, I love you using those words in our space, because it makes such a big difference. So that's beautiful.
Well, nature is such a just a brilliant teacher, because nature goes through seasons. And your rose garden, you don't have one rose sitting out there looking at the other rose, comparing itself to the other rose. They're both just blooming in their own beauty and essence.
Yes.
And so I think there's a lot of, it's subtle, but if we're attentive to it, nature can really offer us so much valuable and inspiring advice.
Yes, so great. Well, on the opposite spectrum of that, we talked a little bit about, fear and just the cycles that people go through with that. You've mentioned about making fear your friend. How do you go about doing that, and how do you move through fear?
Well, I, like you and many of the listeners, there's many days that I've taken fear and I've wrestled it to the ground and I've mounted it over the fireplace and gone, okay, done, got it handled. And the next morning I walk out and it's sitting there staring me in the face again. So I said, okay, this battle's not working out that well for me. So in my mind, I thought, when I'm fearful of something, it's fear is such a loyal friend. It really is for me. Because when I have fear, it's because I'm out of alignment somewhere in my life. And I've taken that control piece back into my hands, at least I think I do. And I'm not in that surrender mode, that letting go mode. And so it reminds me of that. And so once again, that's somewhat of how the title of my book came about is, if you've ridden a horse, if your ass isn't square in the saddle, it can be uncomfortable. So when fear rises for me, I say thank you, because it reminds me to get back in the saddle and have a solid seat. And so, yeah, making fear my friend was one of the best things I've ever done. It's just, okay, thank you. And it, like I said, it is a loyal friend, because it rears its self up several times a day sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think also fear, it's an indicator, right? It's pointing us in a direction of things that we maybe need to look at, things to maybe look at a different perspective. Actually, it can save our lives at time too. I mean, sure. I can remember being on the street as a former police officer, and, fear alerted me to a lot of different sure. things. And when you listen to that within yourself, you can make quicker decisions. You can really understand like what's happening around that. And I think that a lot of times part of our journey helps us learn certain lessons. So, what was your sport as an athlete?
I played basketball, volleyball, and ran track.
Nice.
All through high school and 2 years in college. And then my second year in college, I had to have a knee surgery. And the surgeon said, you can't continue to be an athlete. My knees are, at that time, and I was quite young when they were diagnosed, I have really bad knees. And he said, if you continue to do this, you're not going to do yourself any favors. So I had to quit doing that, that's hard. And I think kids today go through this, especially if they're athletic. I was so identified with being an athlete. I knew how to put a uniform on and go out and slam the crap out of a volleyball or shoot a basketball or run fast on a track. But once that was all taken away from me, that was a big disruptive time in my life, because I had my school and my education, that I was in college. So I had school to focus on, and then I went and got a job. But it really was a time that forced me to go, okay, you're not going to be an athlete for the rest of your life. So this is kind of a turning point or a fork in the road. Let's start to think about how you want to contribute on a higher level than being an okay athlete. I was never going to become a pro, but I loved it so much. And so to put that passion in a different place that was really going to be fulfilling for a lifetime versus a short period of time. And I learned a lot as an athlete. I loved it. It teaches you about teamwork and persistence and practice and focus and all those kinds of things. So I took all of those tools that I already had in my tool bag from being an athlete and just have been adding to them as I've gone through this, traversed through this journey of life. And so it was a good time for me, but also a life-changing time too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting, we put all these titles on ourselves, like, athlete or mom or, whatever it is in our work. And sometimes when life throws things at us and it's like, I'm thinking of your analogy about being on a horse, like you get knocked off the horse, right? Because you're no longer identifying as that thing. And I keep coming back to you talking about, this thing about being authentic, about who you are. When we get stuck in some of the titles, and they're not necessarily, they may be part of who we are, but it's not the totality of who we are. When we have some of these setbacks, how is it that we can, look beyond those titles and come back to who we authentically are?
Well, I think most people in their gut know. I think that's the one trusted friend that we have that we don't necessarily go to for advice enough, is if one sits back and just is really honest with themselves and says, what do you really know about yourself to be true? What do you really know about yourself to be who you want to show up in the world? We know in our gut. It's a matter of having the courage and the willingness to show up with that no matter what. So I think just spending quiet time with oneself, often I do it every day, to really just set the tone for your day and check in with yourself. Because as we started this whole conversation with, there's a lot of distraction out there. And I think the internet and social media is a wonderful tool in many ways, but it's also a place you go to that there generally isn't a lot of truth about it, because on social media, you can be anything you say you are. You can take a picture of anything you want or submit something out to the world that maybe isn't real. And so I think, especially for the human side of us, it's important in our self-talk. When we say something to ourselves about ourselves, I always say, ask the question, is that true? Because, you might say, oh, I'm so stupid. Stop. Is that true? No, it's not. Because, you're not a stupid person. Number two, is that making the situation better? It either it is or it isn't. And number three, is it serving you? Is it aligned with your values? Is it aligned with who you say you are as an authentic person? If the answer to any one of those questions is no, then you have to have a different conversation with yourself. Say something that's true, say something that makes the situation better, and say something that serves you as a human being so you can go out and serve others.
Right. It's so important to take those pauses to ask yourself, those deeper questions, right? Because, our minds can take us in so many different ways, but to actually stop and take a moment to find out what's true for ourselves, that is such an important skill to be able to have. And that's why, surrounding yourself around people that help you with that, and to trust yourself along that way as well. And I can see now why Larry wanted to connect with us, because with SPAlife being, our show here, and the SPA is seek power always, right? It's that power within you to do your bigger work in the world. And so when we acknowledge that, we really can stand in our authentic self and really be able to look at things from a different perspective. So, as you know, our theme for this season is, how are we creating freedom in our life? So how are you creating freedom today for yourself?
Well, the one thing for me, freedom comes from just being who I am. And unapologetically so, not in a way that is disruptive or mean-spirited or disrespectful to other people. But for example, I'm the kind of girl that wears cowgirl boots, blue jeans, and a top. And if I'm not in that, I'm in workout clothes. And so for me to go out and pretend that I'm some kind of fashion icon or some kind of person that really is fashionable, that's just not who I am. I'm really comfortable in my own skin, and also it's just doing the things that you want to do when you want to do them, with whom you want to do them, and doing them for the right reasons, versus to make someone else happy or to make yourself look better, to make yourself be liked. I think, it starts at a very young age where we start to not be who we are because we don't think that we're going to fit in and be liked by the cool crowd, or that someone's going to say something about us. And so from way back when, I think there's a lot of pressure in society to present in a way that isn't who you really are. Mm-hmm. And the most freedom comes from embracing life as it comes, and trusting and making fear your friend, because fear is going to show up. And, as you said, being a police officer, fear is your friend in many ways, but it has to be from a survival standpoint. And it can also be from the standpoint of a reminder of, no, everything's okay. Just trust, just get back in the saddle. Remember that life is happening for you. It's not happening to you. So carry on as you're traversing and stay in your lane. That's how we end up not hurting each other every day when we're commuting to and from the places we go. For the most part, everybody stays in their lane. And if we as individuals will just stay in our lane, everybody's in a different lane. Everybody's in a different season. And so we would become more tolerant and respectful of others if we just allow ourselves to be in our lane and allow others to be in their lane, wherever they are, meet people where they are, and not have expectations of them that are beyond where they are in their lives right now.
Absolutely. So beautifully said, Annie. And I know that our listeners are going to want to stay in contact with you. How can they best do that?
My website, which is anniemfonte.com. And my Facebook and Instagram is the same, Annie M. Fonte.
Awesome. I love that. I just thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and being here with us today.
I've enjoyed it. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, you got it. And for our listeners out there, thank you for being here. Take a moment to, take a deep breath and see what's going on in your life. If there's anything that's out of alignment, or as Annie was talking about, that is not authentic, take a look at that. Take the moment to have that silence to, really shift things from a different perspective. If you have any questions for either one of us, please reach out. We'd be happy to connect with you. And until we connect again, live your spa life. Bye for now. Bye-bye.